One of the territory's richest in natural resources, rare earth elements and oil, is also one of the most inhospitable places on the planet. We're talking about a gigantic island inhabited by a few Inuit, and which, although part of the Kingdom of Denmark, has all the potential to gain independence if its inhabitants, who are few, so desire. The problem here is that control of this region is something that many world powers covet, and today we will explain why. Get ready, because today we're going to talk about Greenland. Hello to all the community of Finance for All, welcome to another video. Let's start with a brief overview of how this unique country functions. Greenland is an autonomous territory within the Kingdom of Denmark and has enjoyed a form of self-government since the Autonomy Act of 1979 and its expansion in 2009. Politically, Greenland is governed by its own parliament, the Inatsiartut, which consists of 31 members, and the executive government, the Naalakkersuisut, led by the local prime minister. Although defense and foreign policy remain Danish responsibilities, Greenland manages most of its internal affairs and controls its natural resources, which provides it with a significant income. Internationally, although formally represented by Denmark, Greenland actively participates in matters related to the Arctic and climate change. Regarding its geography, Greenland is the largest island in the world, with over 2 million square kilometers of surface area. However, 84% of this surface is covered by a massive ice sheet up to 3 kilometers thick. In 2004, Denmark filed a claim for nearly 1 million square kilometers of the Arctic, including the North Pole and the Lomonosov Ridge, also claimed by Russia and Canada. This region holds tremendous strategic value because it is situated between North America, Russia, and Europe, near the so-called Juk, Greenland, Iceland, and the United Kingdom and Jin, Greenland, Iceland, and Norway gaps. And yes, we know, it seems that in current times, claiming pieces of the Arctic is quite trendy. This is easier when the claimed territories are uninhabited, and it so happens that Greenland is practically uninhabited. To give you an idea, the population density is 0.14 people per square kilometer. It is a territory 50 times larger than mainland Denmark but has only 1% of its population. Evidently, the population we are talking about does not live well. The educational level is low, there are no roads, their trade balance is pathetic and, of course, negative. They depend entirely on fishing, and alcoholism and suicide rates are extremely high. Some inhabitants of Greenland are beginning to see Denmark as a problem rather than a solution. While today the two main parties, the Social Democrats and the Socialists, advocate for securing economic autonomy first, other minor forces propose cutting ties abruptly, even at the risk of losing quality of life. The reality is that, economically, dependence on Denmark is still very significant, but that could change if Greenland could offer new things to potential trade partners. Since the mid-19th century, Greenland has been a key site for the exploitation of minerals such as copper and cryolite. Throughout the 20th century, mining expanded to other resources such as zinc, lead, and silver. Coal extraction began in 1960, while uranium was discovered in 1956 and mined actively until the 1980s when Denmark ceased its nuclear development plans. Additionally, oil and gas exploration began in the 1970s, a process that was interrupted and later resumed in the 1990s due to estimates of significant oil and gas reserves offshore in the northeast and northwest of Greenland. To give you an idea, the deposits there are equivalent to half of Saudi Arabia's reserves, and this would have a significant long-term impact on the Greenlandic economy. The problem here is that we know from other examples that black gold can bring bad fortune if the country attempting to exploit it does not have a solid and diversified economy. For this reason, in 2021, the government announced the end of fossil resource exploitation. With the exploitation of mineral resources, the need for powerful infrastructure is undeniable. Most exploitation areas are in difficult-to-access zones, and only large projects could be viable. This is problematic because the labor force there is very low, and mobilizing resources to the island is very expensive. Regarding uranium, Denmark has embraced denuclearization and is not interested in this type of energy. However, in 2013, the Greenlandic Parliament repealed the ban on uranium exploitation, but this ban was reinstated in 2021, when there were already 70 active mining exploration licenses. Generally, where there are rare earth elements, there is usually uranium, and Greenland holds a whopping 10% of the world's total. In fact, it is believed that Kvanefjeld could be the second largest mine for rare earth elements and uranium in the world. This mine has been very important in Greenland's internal politics since the company focusing on Kvanefjeld mining in 2016 had a Chinese company as its main shareholder. After the 2021 elections, two pro-independence parties that opposed the mining due to its danger and pollution came to power. It seems that this project, which sought to exploit uranium and rare earth elements, was eventually cancelled, but the debate over the mine's future is still open, involving not only the few indigenous inhabitants but also indirectly the major world powers. Today, according to polls, the desire for independence is predominant, as long as it does not mean a decrease in quality of life. This is logical. The country is entirely subsidized, and replacing the aid economy with natural resource exploitation seems to be the only viable way to achieve this independence. However, the situation is more complex. Greenland lacks leaders with adequate political experience. It appears that the emergence of an Inuit state would lead to the creation of a very vulnerable entity in an unstable and dynamic global context. It would require strong backing, likely not very different from what Denmark offers. However, it is noteworthy that support from the United States could bolster Greenland's claims over 895,000 square kilometers of Arctic Ocean, which are in conflict with the claims of Canada and Russia. In conclusion, a flock of vultures is circling over Greenland's territory, waiting for it to decide on the path to independence in the not-too-distant future. And who are these actors? Well, first, the United States. For the Americans, the mineral and energy resources, as well as the strategic position in the Arctic, could be a key piece in their control of the region. Relations with Greenland are good, and geologically Greenland is part of the American continent. Additionally, the U.S. interest also lies in expanding and strengthening its military presence, like the existing Thule Air Base on the large island. It's worth mentioning that back in the 1860s, U.S. President Johnson highlighted Greenland's importance in terms of resources and strategic position, and almost a century later, in 1946, Harry Truman offered the Danish government $100 million in gold to buy Greenland. Of course, the Asian giant is another major interested party. Although geographically farther from the Arctic than Russia and the United States, China defines itself as a near-Arctic power. This is no coincidence. For now, it has focused on Greenland as a key point in its Polar Silk Road. The northern route would shorten transport time between Asian and European ports by about a week and would be a much-needed alternative to the Strait of Malacca. Additionally, Chinese funds provide Greenlanders with an alternative to absolute dependence on Denmark, which also supports the island's nationalist aspirations. By the way, China is already involved in 4 mining-related initiatives in Greenland, operated by both state-owned and private companies, all aligned with the Chinese government's geopolitical goals. The 4 projects include the Banfield project for rare earth extraction, the Isua project for iron extraction, the Vaner-Halvo project for copper extraction, and finally, the Citronen base metal project. Finally, although Russia does not have a prominent role regarding Greenland, it has a dominant position throughout the Arctic region. It is the country with the largest military presence in this area, utilizing Soviet-era facilities. Russia dominates the northern route, which the Kremlin considers its main national communication channel. Additionally, it has by far the largest fleet of icebreaker ships. However, this route is still not a viable and profitable alternative to the Strait of Malacca, but it is likely to become so soon. In conclusion, it seems that in the coming years, Greenland is set to become another major geopolitical battleground, like the Sahel, the Indo-Pacific, or the Middle East. And you, what would you do if you were the ruler of the island? Who do you think would be your best ally? Feel free to leave your answer in the comments.